Our distillation about 20 minutes ago, 25 minutes ago. So right now we're just waiting for the steam to come up. So what we use is a little laser temperature probe, and we shine that on the vessel, and we're just looking for a temperature change. So if I keep going up, so I know there's a temperature change right there, so that's where the steam is. So it takes roughly about 30 minutes, 40 minutes for the steam to get to the top. And once that does, that steam will come out that pipe on the top and then into our condensers. So we're just waiting for that to happen right now. We're waiting for that steam to rise, go into the condenser, cool back down, turn back into a liquid, and then come into our separator. So that's when we get kind of our biggest rush of oil, what we call passover. And that's when the oil and steam passes over the top into the separator. So we still got maybe 15 minutes or so. So we'll just hang out and relax, listen to the beautiful sound of steam. But yeah. And then if this one had a catastrophic failure, we're only expanding 120 gallons of water, which is going to be a lot less of a hassle or a lot less damage caused in this guy than we could potentially have in that. And again, there's a lot more safety features on top of that safety valve on top. We have temperature probes in there, pressure probes in there. So if it gets above temperature, it'll shut it down. We'll have to go in there, restart it, and start it back up. And for that, we can tell if there's low water in it, which would overheat the tubes and melt them, which would cause that catastrophic failure. And then there's temperature probes, pressure probes. If it gets too high in pressure, it'll shut it down. It's a pretty awesome unit. I've been really, well, the three people that came before, I've been talking about it for a while now, and I've been really excited. So I'm really happy we got that in. We just actually got it in. Well, we cut it really close. People showed up on Sunday. 2.5 weeks ago, we got it done on Saturday. Yes, and we had that one over on that side, just waiting to put it in. So we finally pulled the trigger, so to say, right before Christmas. We had enough time. Unfortunately, we ran into a couple issues. There's a piece on the bottom, it's called a flame scanner, another piece of safety device on there that if it does not see a flame inside the boiler, it'll shut it off the gas to it. That way, if ever it loses flame, it doesn't keep pumping gas into it, which could be a gas explosion. So we had a flame scanner on the bottom that reads the infrared signal from the flame. Well, in transport, the vibrations on the truck, it's from Highland Flats to here. What is it? In the truck, it's about a 17-hour drive, I believe. So all that vibration the whole time just damaged that. So we had to order a new one in. It took about 2 weeks to get here. Because we had to wait 2 weeks, the guy that was installing it went on holidays for 3 weeks. So luckily that piece came in, and then he came back from holidays on the Thursday before harvest started. So the Thursday before harvest started, we didn't even have it running. We got it running that day. Then Friday, we had to do a few other little things. We had to flush it out, run a cycle through it to flush anything that was left in it that's just been sitting there. And then we could start it up and run. So the flush was done on Friday and Saturday. Sunday, I took a day off and relaxed for a bit. And then Monday, when we had a group of people here, was when we tested it. So I'm not going to lie, that was a little stressful. But it worked perfect. So there's still a few little things we want to do to it just to make life a little easier. Right now, there's a little pump on the side that we have to manually turn on. I'd like to wire that in so that as soon as we turn on the boiler, it turns on automatically. So nobody forgets to turn it on in the morning or nobody forgets to turn it off at night. Thankfully, I'm the only guy that is to blame if it's forgotten because I'm the only guy that runs it. So I have nobody to blame but myself, which is kind of nice because but that'll just basically make things a little easier, a little less forgetful. I have a checklist to go through for startup and shutdown until, again, I've only been using it for 2.5 weeks. So I've used it a little bit down in Ecuador. They have the same one, only a little smaller. Highland Flats has the exact same one. And that's, like I was saying, this one was brought up from Highland Flats. They had two to replace their 300 horsepower boiler. So we bought them two 150s in the event that, okay, if we're only doing 1 or 2 distillations, we don't need the whole thing running. We don't need both of them running. So we can save a little bit of money and efficiency by only running one. Well, they never had to use both. So they had one as a backup, essentially. So they said, well, you guys need one. Let's just remove this one from us, send it up to you guys. Now, you guys don't have to have a $200,000 bill at the end of the week. And we're sharing instead of, we're making use of something that's not necessarily needed down there. It is kind of benefit to have a backup. But like I was saying, trees are pretty forgiving. We got a big window of time to distill the trees. So if for some reason we're waiting 2 weeks for that flame scanner to come in, it's not going to ruin our season too badly. But if we're doing lavender or helichrysum, where we only have potentially 2 weeks to 4 weeks to do it, waiting 2 weeks in the middle of that is catastrophic for the season. So for us, having one works great. I'm pretty stoked that it's here and running, and I can't rave enough about them. So Michael Carter has done in Highland Flats, has done the studies because they've had it for 7 years. So in the last 7 years, and before that, when they were running their other boiler, their boiler that looked exactly the same as ours, they did a lot of studies and kept a lot of the data. So Michael Carter recorded about between, depending on the season, between 20 to 35% increase in efficiency. So that's including the man hours for startup, fuel costs. So propane costs are quite a bit lower with this unit because it is a smaller unit. It doesn't require as many BTUs to heat it and make the steam. So yeah, I don't know what else I can rave about those units, but yeah,
I can feel your excitement.
it's,
Yeah.
I'm a steam guy.
Oh.
So that's where my passion lied before coming to Young Living, and then that kind of translated over into the distillation process. So before I came to Young Living, I worked at the natural gas refinery just south of town. So basically I took molten sulfur or sour gas and extracted the sulfur out of it and converted that into molten sulfur. And then we put that on a rail car and sent it down to the Port of Vancouver. I don't know if anybody's been to the Burrard Inlet and seen those massive piles of sulfur at one point. I don't think they have them there now, but they used to have them.
Yeah,
They were like, yeah, it was like 200-foot tall mountain of sulfur, which I was wondering one day when it would catch on fire because they would have never been able to put that out. I don't know if we had a couple fires out at the plant and it was really hard to put out. But so I went from smelling sulfur all day to coming here, which was pretty freaking awesome. Went from a hazardous environment. So I wore a air breathing mask probably half the day. H2S is a really bad gas. I believe it's 9 parts per million and it can kill you. So if you get it, like, smells like rotten eggs. If you can smell it, you're probably already damaged. So I'd wear an air mask with a bottle of oxygen on my back half the day, walking around my plant, making sulfur. Not very fun. I got off work one day and drove 17 hours to Vancouver to go visit my mom. And as soon as I came in the house, she smacked me upside the head because she thought I was smoking again because I smelled like matches because the sulfur was permeating my skin. So even though, like, I'd shower, all my clothes smelled like sulfur. So this place is kind of nice going into town and somebody goes, somebody from Young Living's here. It's a good smell though, not a, right? Not a horrible. I mean, I kind of got used to the smell of sulfur, but it's not a nice smell, right? Like yeah. So coming there to coming here, night and day difference. Working with something that's hazardous to working with something that's healthy. but steam is kind of where I started. So I went to school to become a steam engineer, learn the properties of steam, how to operate with it, and yeah. So let me just take a temperature a while, so we might be close. Yeah, we are through the floor. Turn it up just a little more. So right now, our steam has hit the floor level. So what I'll do now is I'll tell the guys upstairs just to keep an eye out. And what they're looking for is that little vent on the top. When they see steam come out of there, I want him to close that vent. And the reason why we wait till we get some steam out of there is to clear out any entrapped air. So when we close that lid, there's a pretty big air space in there. If we leave all that air in, it'll get pushed through the system into here, and that'll basically volcano out the top. Looks pretty cool. Not very fun in my eyes, because we do spill a lot of oil on the floor. Looks pretty cool though when you see a fountain of water coming out the top. But we want to close that after we get all the air out, and then I'll turn the steam down a little bit just to gently pass that oil and hydrosol through there. So let me just go tell them upstairs that we're almost ready.
Okay.
Just coming through the floor, yeah. All right. So now what I'm gonna do is once he tells me they've got steam, then I'll start checking this pipe here for temperature. And again, just this one that comes over. I guess it's kind of hard to see the laser when we're right underneath it. But again, we're just looking for a temperature change, and that's kind of how I can gauge when we're just about ready. What we'll also see is you'll see this level kind of rise up to about here, and then you'll start seeing the oil come up. So we'll give it a few minutes here, and then we'll see the beauty of distillation. You're just a laser pointer to tell where you're pointing it at. What they have in Highland Flats, and what I keep meaning to do, but I always run out of time because there's always something to do, is what Highland Flats did is they took some high temperature vehicle paint. So it's like a brake caliper paint, and it actually changes color depending on the temperature. So they painted a little red line, and then you can see it get a little darker where the heat is. So I keep meaning to do that. There's always something on the go that takes up my time that, and this is kind of cool to use too. It kind of, yeah.
I don't understand, when you put the laser point there, you can see the changes of the temperature.
And then the light just tells you where I am. So if I hold it up to my hand is 91.4 degrees Fahrenheit. If I, yeah, it's going through the shirt, so it's a little colder. If we do your hand, 92.5, little. So right now it's about 140 degrees, but it'll change depending on where you're at, just because of the, if there's more chips there, if there's more needles there, the steam will go through a little quicker and it'll get closer to the edge. So all I'm looking for is a change in temperature. So if I go all the way up to the top, this one's already through, but you kind of see it's a little lighter up top, or a little more, little colder. So I can tell that the steam is kind of right in that area. Yeah.
So what are you waiting for? When you switch it there, it has to be around like the same temperature as up here?
No, it just, all I'm looking for is where the steam is. I'm not looking for any specific temperature. Pink one down.
Yeah.
I'll put it over here so I'm even. There we go, 2 and 2. I got the long ones over here and the square ones over here. The only reason why I'm looking is so that I can tell them upstairs that it's almost time. So that if they're sweeping the floor or chatting away like they're doing right now, they can pay attention. Because if they got their back turned and they don't see the steam, then there'll be a big cloud of steam coming up there and we'll lose a bunch of oil at that. So we want to close the lid as soon as we get steam, but not close it too soon so we don't push out all that air. So that's what we're looking for when we look for the temperature, just to see where that steam level is. And if I'm feeling brazen, I'll do it with my hand, but it is pretty hot. It's okay when it's down here because you can start up here where it's cold and then come down and you can kind of like, oh, it's warm there. Okay, steam's there. But like I said, we just use the laser. It's nice and easy. It gives a visual representation. I want to do the paint. Maybe this will get me off my butt this summer and actually end up doing it.
And do you do it with all cook?
Yeah. Yeah. We do mostly conifers, so it's pretty close to the same with everyone. Not yet. She's gonna run out of memory in her phone before it goes. All that water will hit the top and spray everybody, which is kind of fun to see, but stressful at the same time because it sprays oil everywhere too, and we don't capture that oil. So Wes has just told me that he's seen the steam upstairs. He's closed that vent. So now I'm going to turn the steam down a little bit just to reduce that flow a little bit more so we don't have it pass over too fast. Yeah. It takes a little longer, but there's less risk of a volcano, which... Exactly. This is the stuff you guys help make, so we definitely don't want to waste any.
And so when we see air bubbles in the hydrosol, that is the air trapped inside the
Usually we won't see
plant
too
material.
many air bubbles unless we turn it up a little more, and then it just carries a little bit of air through. But we'll see a lot of oil come up from that.
Oops.
Down to like below 30 degrees Celsius.
Below 30.
Yeah.
The cold channel is below 30.
So the cooling water goes in. We have a pond down in the field. That pond sits at about 4 degrees Celsius. So that water comes up through the pipe, through this blue pipe, into the bottom of the separators, and then comes out the other side at about 35 degrees Celsius. So the oil and the hydrosol coming out is fairly cold coming out. The hotter it gets, the more chance it'll gas off some of those compounds. The volatile VOCs, volatile organic compounds, I believe is what they are. So that's why sometimes, like if you leave a bottle closed and you open it, you'll get a whiff of something fresh off. That's some of those compounds gassing off. So the hotter it is, the more likely some of those compounds will gas off. So we want to keep it fairly cool in the condensing process. Yeah. 100, then I know we're like less than a minute away.
Learning how to distill. But no, it's okay. The details that he was talking about was what Gary learned over the 5 years that he went to France, traveling back and forth between France and the US to learn how to distill. And the reason why he had to adjust, and he's explained it really clearly, he has to keep adjusting the steam, right? So what Gary has learned is you have to adjust the steam, and he didn't have all these fancy thermometer. So how did he do it? He learned to listen, and he taught the distillery manager to listen to the sounds of the change of the steam. And that's why he actually, when he first started, he actually slept in the boiler room and he slept in the distillery throughout the night to listen to the sounds and take notes. And that's how he learned how to distill. But obviously now, not everybody needs to learn because we have all these fancy stuff. And we've been doing this for more than 30 years.
You'll still see it every once in a while if you look at a distillery manager.
Yeah.
I don't know why I sounded really echoey.
No, you're good.
Anyway, if you watch a distillery manager long enough, every once in a while you'll see kind of that dog cocked of the head a little bit. And that's just something changed. A pitch changed just a little bit, and we're just listening to what's going on. So sorry to interrupt.
No. You're actually add to that.
Yeah.
Because when I used to come to harvest with Gary, and he would suddenly say, "Oh, Passover is coming," and nobody would know why. He knows.
Yeah.
He said he can hear it.
Yeah.
So he said it sounds different, and I keep asking him, "How did it sound?" He said, "Well, it just sounds different."
It's really hard to explain.
And then he said, "You have to come more often, and then you learn to hear the difference." I'm like, okay. Yeah.
We're pretty fortunate here. Most of our distillations are in like a 4-hour time period. If anybody's ever been to Kona Reforestation Project in Hawaii and seen Sacred and Sandalwood distilled, their distillation process is just over 30 hours. So for us, we don't really have to worry about the outside temperature, but for them, if they start it in the morning, well then in the afternoon in Hawaii, it's gonna get really warm. So they're gonna have to turn down the steam a little bit just to compensate for that extra heat. And then halfway through the distillation, it's gonna be in the middle of the night. So then they're gonna have to turn the steam up a little bit just to compensate for the change in temperature outside. But for 30, I think they were saying 32 to 36 hours, something like that.
Yeah.
It's one of the longest distillation processes in Young Living. So
Yeah.
really affected by the weather. They're really keeping on top of where the steam is at, what temperature we're at. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why Gary always said, in order to have our quality of the oil, we have to control the temperature, the pressure, and the time very well in order to have all of that. And distilling every oil is different. And that's why he has to go to every farm and every distillery to teach the distillery manager how to manage the pressure and the steam and the time. Oh, it's a lot of work.
Just about there. We're about up to 100.
So now the
Yeah.
sand, the aroma getting stronger.
Yeah, so there might be a leak on one of the things up there. So let me go tell them. Yeah, we're good there. That.
Any second though.
Yeah, oh yeah. I can already see it moving.
而家睇到嗰啲咧已經有嗰啲油咧，其實係之前嘅，但係咧開始嚟緊啦，升緊上嚟啦。係啊，呢啲 bubble 咧都係油嚟嘅。
One more inch. And here we go.
Whoa.
So all those bubbles coming up are pure oil. If you see a bubble come up really fast, that'll usually be an air bubble. But all of those bubbles moving at about that speed are all oil. Shall we go do some decanting and filtering? So today we're going to filter some oil, filter the oil that we distilled on Monday. Like I said, it's going to be a practice run for Friday. So Friday we're going to filter and decant the oil that's being made right now. And that's the oil that you guys went out and harvested some trees for. You guys came into the distillery yesterday, not tomorrow, that would be pretty hard. You guys came in yesterday and helped fill that distiller up. Now today we're distilling that oil, and then Friday we're going to filter and decant it. So I say practice run today, so that way if for some reason somebody spills, it's not as it's not the oil you guys helped make. So not that this is any less important, but so all of our filtering and decanting is done by hand here. So every oil we make, every drop of oil we make, like I said on Monday, we run it through the unbleached coffee filter by hand. So those big barrels out there, most of them are full. All of those had one of our hands pouring it all through the coffee filter to filter it out. And like I said, we're getting rid of that organic material that's carried over in the distillation process. Cellulose fibers from the tree. Every once in a while, we'll get some needles in there. It's a natural product, so it's going to have a little bit of carryover. So we want to filter that out because it is organic material and it can create bacteria. So, yeah. Who wants to go first?